Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
6 years ago, see an article in newspaper about friend getting arrested. Snap a pic to send to him and friends. Pic related. Tells creepy ass fucking creepypasta-esque story on FB about man driving a car that dies on side of the road. Next day find article about grave body snatcher. Implies man driving car was dead and buried. Years later. Find old pics of article and text convo. Remember story. Girlfriend thinks it's bullshit, I don't know what to believe. Skip, long version. If want and head to the post that starts with quotes for his copy, pasted Facebook journal from back then. I live in Winfield, Louisiana, a shitty little town in Wynn Parish, you other states call them counties. You may have heard of the LA cities Lake Charles, Natchitoches, or Shreveport. All those are more popular cities between 1 hour and 2 hours from Winfield. Nothing special happens here except every now and then a racist preacher is caught smoking meth, or some shit, and people have some drama to feed off of for a while. Anyway, this happened about 6 years ago. I was looking through pictures on an old phone when I found a photo of this old newspaper article, and I remember how fucking weird the story that went along with it was. I read the newspaper pretty much every day. My favorite section is the police blotter, where they describe the events the local police were called out to during the previous day. Sometimes it's the only section I read, and I flipped to that page and started skimming through the articles to find it. A few of the events down I see the name of someone I know. His name is Nate. Which isn't surprising since the town and the towns around are so small that everyone knows everyone. We met in high school when I used to live in Jonesboro, like 30 minutes north of Winfield in Jackson Parish, and at the time of the article we were in college and had some classes at the university in Natchitoches, but we weren't especially close. I had my friends and he had his. He lived in the dorms at the university, but after high school I found some cheap apartments in Winfield and just made the half-hour commute to the university. But one thing about him is he never did drugs. No alcohol, no cigarettes, no weed, not even a beer on the weekend. He didn't judge those, so after a while he wasn't such a bummer to party with. He never got annoyed when we were drunk or high, just laughed and cut up with the rest of us. And that's like the most important detail here. He didn't have any real strong opinions against others using. He would even argue for legalizing weed sometimes. But if he got high, it was a contact high from the chronic smoke in the room. And I'd never seen him act loopy, even when the room was like foggy thick full of smoke. If he had any nicotine in his system, it was from second-hand smoke, and I'd never seen him even pretend to drink a drop of alcohol. He told us his parents were really bad users when he was a kid. They'd been to prison when he was young and did NA and AA and got clean. But any time he opened up he'd say he never really forgave them and wanted to make sure he didn't turn into them since it's clearly in his genes. So, I snapped the picture of the article with my cell so I can send it to my girlfriend and a few others, including him, Nate. We all pretty much said the same thing. Read the article, it doesn't sound like him at all. Who would admit you're going to go buy weed? Nate wasn't a super genius, but he wasn't a fucking moron. So right at first the article didn't sit right with anyone I sent it to. Some of us thought that maybe Nate was drinking and smoking alone or sneaking some during our parties, and that's why he never judged and didn't mind hanging around us when we had some fun. And if you drink or smoke, you know it was hard to come by a sober friend who didn't judge you when you drank or smoked. I didn't know what to believe, but I never saw a beer can around Nate unless I brought it. I never smelled weed or liquor on him. He never acted weird or like he was high or drunk. When I send Nate the picture of the article one snapped, we have the text conversation posted here. After sending a few friends the article one snapped, they all asked the same questions more or less, so I saved mine and Nate's conversation to send to them instead of typing shit. and after mine and Nate's text convo I was leaning heavily on Nate's side. The article didn't sound like him to begin with, and for him to deny what was in it also didn't sound like something he'd lie about. He'd have no reason to deny it. All his friends drank and smoked. He had nothing to lose. Nothing bad happened to him after his parents found a way to bail him out and he served his mandated community service. Life for him went on as normal. Still to this day he denies what was in that article, and there's no fucking reason for him to deny it if it was true. If you can't read the image of our conversation, it says the article is bullshit and it's not what actually happened, and that he posted his side of the story on Facebook. He posted the story on his Facebook notes page and I copied and pasted it from there. Back then you had a limited number of characters per status, and if you wanted to post a wall of text you had to do it in a separate notes page. Note: I didn't get to read the post immediately. At this time, I was on Facebook but didn't log on very often. I woke up every morning, read the paper and ate my breakfast, went to school, went to work, bathed and did homework, and went to bed. I did my clothes and partied on the weekends and checked my Facebook when it crossed my mind. So, by the time I read Nate's post, it was nearly a week later.
I just got bailed out of jail for the stupidest bullshit I've ever seen. $5,000 bond I don't fucking have for a bunch of trumped-up charges for no fucking reason. I was charged for DUI, having an open container, intent to buy and intent to sell marijuana, possession of paraphernalia, and fined for a broken headlight. Does that fucking make any sense to any of you? I don't even drink or toke when it's free, and I swear to God these fucking asshole pigs just wanted to fake a score, and who's going to question them? I'm out in the fucking middle nowhere scared out of my goddamn mind, and they fucking care about is stealing my fucking money. Here's what fucking happened. The weekend's fucking over. It's like 4 in the goddamn morning and I got class in 4 hours. Going to take me about an hour or so to get back to the dorms. I'm going to take a little nap and go to school like fucking normal. About 5 or so minutes out of Jonesboro and the highway has been fucking deserted since I left, but there's this one fucking car driving in the same direction but on the wrong side of the road and without his headlights on. I'm going about 50. This guy is going much slower, but he is fucking weaving in his lane like at any moment he could fucking leave his lane. I slow my ass down, his car keeps weaving. I honk my horn really fucking long because I'm thinking this fucker is falling asleep and going to hit me, but he keeps weaving down the goddamn road in the wrong goddamn lane. But I really don't give a fuck. This shitty unknown part of a goddamn party state, and if this fucker isn't falling asleep then he's fucked up on something and I don't want a part of that. I start to just cruise down my lane, hoping to God this asshole doesn't decide to weave on over and slam into me, but that's what fucking happens, goddammit. I'm so fucking mad just thinking about it. Just as the front of my truck clears his rear bumper, this quickly swerves over into my lane and bashes his passenger rear door into my fucking headlight. I'm raging, but this asshole just gets back into his lane and weaves in it at like 25 miles an hour. I got to see the face of this piece of shit, but that's when shit starts to get weird. I kind of speed up so I can get a good look at him with my window down because we're going slow enough for him to hear me yell at him. First thing I noticed was the fucker's dirty face, but he also looked strange in a way that wasn't very obvious. That's not the very first thing that I noticed or that worried me, so I'll get to that later, but I do remember noticing it when I looked over. Alright, so the guy behind the wheel was driving with his forehead resting on the steering wheel, but like his head was too heavy or he was trying not to fall asleep because as his head would start to drift to one side, so would the steering wheel and car, then he'd jerk his head back to the center like he caught himself nodding off, all while his head stayed rested on the wheel, so the car would kind of straighten back up. I kind swerved a little with the car so he didn't fucking hit me again. That's what kind of put me off but frustrated me even fucking more, cause if we had to get out and deal with this piece of shit he probably wasn't going to have insurance or be able to talk coherently, and I didn't want to call the fucking cops cause I knew that bullshit was going to take forever. And it turns out that was smart because of what happened later. Who knows what other bullshit charges I was going to get stuck with. Anyway, the guy looked like he had arms, so I didn't know if the forehead swerving was part of a bad trip, and remember, I kind of thought he looked weird, like something was off or like something was missing. So I fucking speed up past him, get in front of him on the opposite side of the goddamn road, hoping no one else is on the road tonight, and slow down to a stop so I can at least take some pictures of the damage, and if this fucker was under the influence, I'll look in his wallet or raid his glove box and steal his insurance card. I don't give a fuck, but I wasn't going to pay for this shit myself. Surprisingly, the bastard doesn't slam into me and stops his car too. I don't immediately get out of the truck because we stop before a sign and I read it and it makes me reconsider everything. Jackson Correctional Facility. Beware of hitchhikers. So I stay in my truck and think about it for a second and watch the guy in his car behind me through my rear view mirror. I want to see if he gives me the "I just broke out of prison" vibe, and I still don't know what to fucking think. The guy was acting sick or like wounded, maybe by the way he was moving slowly and keeping his head down most of the time. I put my truck in park, and eventually the car behind me started to ease forward like he let his foot off the brake, and it idled into my rear bumper, which didn't even leave a scratch. But now I can see him a little better and the offness of his face I mentioned earlier is so apparent, but his headlights are off. It's 4 in the morning. And light from the moon is helping, but it's not really crystal clear, you know? There's definitely wet mud all over his hair and face, and where the mud isn't covering him, his skin is a creepy pale white like the face of the goddamn moon. Like I said, the guy is acting wounded. He looks up at me, but I can't really see his eyes, so I don't know if he was just looking at what was in front of him or at my reflection in my mirror. But his mouth is like disproportionate to the rest of his face. His whole bottom jaw like has no fat on it, while his nose and eyes kind of look normal, you know? But he was baring his teeth the whole time like he was sneering at me. He eventually stops looking up and slumps his body over to the side, against the driver's side door, and stops moving, and that's when I get out of my truck. I figure he's either asleep or dead at worst, so I'm less afraid now because he can't hurt me. Don't get me wrong. I'm still fucking creeped out and I was going to be careful, but the whole time he looked like he was teetering on consciousness, and now he's out like a light. And sue me, but the first thing I did was walk around and take a picture of his license plate and the damage where he smashed into my headlight. I walk in front of the driver door and the guy's head is against the window, leaving wet mud smeared against it, but it looks like the guy's hair has been ripped out in patches, exposing his chalk white creepy scalp. So the whole time I'm thinking the mud on his face is definitely because he tried to flee prison, and maybe he was shot or got hung up on some razor wire or attacked by some police canines, cause something had to rip out his hair. But I haven't seen a squad of police zipping by like I figure they would be if someone escapes and they knew about it, so I still don't know what to fucking think. Trying to take pictures, but it's way too dark and my phone's camera doesn't have a flash on it, so I walk back over to my truck and pull the fluorescent standing mini floodlight I always pull out when we go tailgating or having some fun outside at night, and quickly set it up next to the car. I take some pictures, and other than the guy not moving in the driver's seat, I see the car is empty except for the mud all over and around the driver's seat. I take a few pictures of the passenger rear door where he fucking hit my truck before I check the passenger front door, and it's unlocked, so I'm going to quickly look in the glove box for this guy's insurance card. But when I open the door, I realize the man is gone and the driver door is open. The engine is still running and I can hear the grass rustling as he tries to get away, but he's trudging so slow like his legs won't work properly, and kind of grunting like he's struggling with everything he's got. He's kind of gasping too, like he's crying. But his arms are dangling by his side like they don't fucking work, and now I really think this guy is hurt, but again, it's the middle of the night. I can see better because of the floodlight, but he's fleeing from the driver's side and the floodlight is on the passenger's side. I don't want to follow this guy and him end up hurting me. So I stand on the side of the road near his car and I can hear him mumbling things like, "Not again, I don't want to go back," and "just leave me alone," over and over, but it's really really raspy and terrifying, like his throat was hoarse, like he had been smoking all of his life. He walks through the thin veil of small trees and I see him sit down like he's exhausted near the railroad tracks on the other side, and he just keeps mumbling some more of the same shit, sputtering sometimes 'cause I guess some of the mud he was covered with got in his mouth, but it was just constantly, "Please don't bring me back," and "I don't know what I'll do if I have to go back," and "Please go away." But it's a little louder now 'cause I guess he's sitting and not trying to run and talk. I didn't say anything, partially because I was too scared and partially because I still thought that maybe he was going to try to trick me into trusting him and didn't want to give him the fucking time of day. But that was probably the creepiest part of the whole night because he wasn't articulating his words properly. Like when I think about how he said it and imitate it, he could make some hard letters that used the tongue but just kind of moaned through the sounds that needed his lips. I remember him baring his teeth at me earlier, like his lips were sneering away from each other. The whole escape from prison idea still sounded like the best story considering the mud and the way this guy looked torn up. I didn't see any blood, but it was dark and I keep thinking maybe the wet mud was bloody dirt and I just couldn't see the red color in the moonlight. He eventually shuts up but then stops moving altogether and stops making noise and just slumps over and lays there. I can't even hear him breath when a second ago every breath was raspy like he was being choked. He wasn't wearing an orange jumpsuit, but most of what he was wearing was covered in mud anyway, but I am pretty convinced this guy tried and failed to escape from prison and now I'm shaken up. Before, when I thought he had died in his car, I hadn't heard him speak or try to trudge away so desperately, and after that it just left me sick to my stomach. I didn't even remember to pick up my floodlight. I just got in my truck and dialed 911 on my cell phone with no luck. Barely 10 minutes out of town and I can't get cell service. But whatever, I was pretty sure he was dead now and I couldn't get a hold of the police. Dodson is less than half an hour away. Again, sue me, but I just left him there and drove towards Dodson with the full intention of telling the police what happened and missing school that day. And that's when the morning got fucking worst because just before I get to Dodson, I fucking get pulled over for going 20 miles over the speed limit. First of all, fucking no. I was maybe going 10 miles over the goddamn limit, and secondly, yeah, I might have been speeding. I just watched a guy die on the fucking side of the road. It's taken me everything I can not to fucking cry my eyes out just from the goddamn trauma. I tell the cop what happened, told him someone was dead on the side of the road. He asked me to step out of the car. He let me tell the whole story to him and he wrote some on a little notepad. Put me in handcuffs without telling me why and put me in his car and brought me to jail. For a while I couldn't get anyone to tell me why I was being charged and what I was being charged with. But eventually when the bail bondsman came they give him a list of charges and they were all fucking bullshit, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I will do what I can to fucking fight this as hard as I can, and sometime they're going to find my goddamn floodlight next to that car and that man's body, and I'm just crossing my fingers they don't try me for murder, but given the bullshit charges I just racked up, who fucking knows what's going to happen.
That's everything on his Facebook journal. The next part of the story I regret telling because I don't have the proof. Everything up to this point I've tried to post the little bit of evidence I had saved because of the situation where I was sending the images to friends and the pictures Nate took of the car. But the article in the next day's newspaper, article 1, didn't save because I didn't find it relevant at the time because I hadn't read Nate's Facebook post yet. And by the time I did read the post and realized the implication of the new article, it had already been over a week and I couldn't find a physical copy of the paper. Flipping to the blotter of the newspaper and skimming through the articles to find it like I usually do, the word cadaver caught my eye and the sentence I read was, I'm paraphrasing, police find the decomposed cadaver missing from Granville Cemetery 6 miles away just north of Dodson. Skimmed through some more, stolen, 08 Nissan Altima found, some number of feet away against trees, soil from the gravesite found inside. The car was apparently never put into park and just idled forward and away when Nate pulled off. Then, no evidence left from the suspect that abandoned the damaged and stolen Nissan. And stage light found at the scene, but police can only speculate. Like I said, me and Nate weren't personally very close, but to my knowledge the cops never questioned him even though his Facebook post both described that scene and that he told the cops what happened. I feel like he'd post about the cops accusing him or arresting him again if they did, and the newspaper article came out a day after Nate posted his journal. After this shit, some of my friends started to think Nate is just some weirdo with a creepy fetish and had help that night, since there were 2 cars, but Nate was never weird. He never said strange shit, never acted more than just a laid-back kid, never had out-of-place hobbies. Sometimes we'd show up unannounced to his dorm. It happens all the time in small towns when you know everyone. And he never looked dirty like he'd been digging graves or anything weird or out of the ordinary. He was at school all week long and we all either stayed in Natchitoches or all drove up to Jonesboro to party, so it's like he was never out of our sight. But who knows, maybe Nate's a freak. Maybe he's crazy and does shit he doesn't even know he's doing. But the whole thing sounds fishy from both sides. I don't have a single reason not to believe Nate's story. Hell, if I'd have ever seen him just next to a shovel in a hardware store I might think otherwise, but nothing. I trust Nate, I mean, wouldn't you?
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.